It is the little details that make your book so good. Today, I want to talk to you about headings and flourishes. Hi, my name is Jennifer Gregson. I am a young adult indie author and professional formatter who is here to walk you through the steps of self-publishing. Let me talk first about why formatting matters, because I don't know if I've ever actually addressed that in these videos that I'm making about formatting. Basically, it is all the things that help your book be more readable. It gives the reader a better experience. Certain things can help convey tone, genre. I'm going to talk a lot about that today. It can just make things easier to read, especially if you're writing nonfiction, right? The headings, the subheadings, the images, all of that needs to be formatted to be readable, to be understood by your reader. And it shows professionalism. So we have come a long way from people thinking self-publishing, right, like is looked down upon or not professional, right? We've come a long, long way. But making sure your book looks professional keeps that high value of indie publishing high for everybody. You don't even level, you raise the bar for all of us, and it keeps us in competition with the trade publishers. People can't even tell the difference, and I love that. Okay, so let us talk chapter headings. There are a lot of different options, and if you use a formatting software, you usually have a couple of different options that goes through and does all of your chapter headings the same, and that's a good thing. You want to be consistent. The things you're looking for to help you convey tone and genre are things like if you're writing a romantic comedy or a romantic fantasy, you might want some sort of script font. If you're writing sci-fi or horror, you might want like a gothic or a computer techie font. If you're writing contemporary fiction, which is my other 3 books, you might want a sans serif or a serif font, depending. So a serif font is like a typewriter, and the sans serif font, I'm going to show some examples. So a serif font has the sort of little lines at the bottom, like of the F, and a sans serif, sans is French for without, is without that. So it's kind of like fiction and nonfiction, right? Fiction is not true, and nonfiction is not true. Very similar situation that does kind of bug me a little bit, but I didn't make the rules. So you kind of have to think through some of that as you start formatting, because again, you want your font to be consistent throughout your entire book. You want your headings to be consistent, your subheadings to be consistent, so you can play around and see what you like. Like I said, most formatting softwares can do that super easy. The one I use, Vellum, gives you a lot of different options that you can see on the other side. It gives you like a viewing panel, and then you can decide a bunch of things at once. I like that. Some of the other options you might have, even after you choose your font or your font family, is how you want your chapter headings especially to look. Do you want them in the center? Do you want it off center to one side or the other? Do you want the chapter 1 to be on one line and maybe the title of the chapter on another line if you're using chapter titles? Do you want it to just say 1? Do you want it to say chapter 1? There are a lot of options, and the beauty is you get to make those decisions. If you are totally like, I have no idea, look at other books in your genre and see kind of what they're doing. Do you like that? Do you want to stick with that? Do you want to go off board? I feel like as long as your book looks professional, no one's going to be like, oh, this author did it so different from the other author. As long as you're not totally like writing a sci-fi, but all of your chapter headings are this romantic script font, right? That's going to throw people. But if you decide to do chapter 1 and you're spelling out the whole thing, but a competitor just has 1, that's kind of personal opinion. And I don't think it's going to make a huge difference. So sometimes we get to play and we get to decide what we like. Some other decisions you have to think about here, along with like how you're going to name your chapters if you are. Some things to think about. If you have alternating POVs, I did a book called Etta and Gina, and each chapter went back and forth, so I made sure to put that in the title. Chapter 1, Etta. Chapter 2, Gina. So on and so forth. If you have a dual POV romance, romantic book, I would definitely put that because you don't want to confuse people. If you have like a lot of POVs, especially put who is the chapter about or who the POV is so that you keep everyone straight. But again, you get to decide things like titles. I read a book once, I cannot remember the title, but each chapter was a different time in the same, I think, 24-hour period. And so that's all the chapter title was. It didn't even say chapter 1 or chapter 2, it just had the time. I loved that. So you kind of get to think about what works with your story, what works with your genre, what is going to help the reader make, understand your book and your story and make them excited to keep reading. A lot of these decisions are just kind of fun to make. And this next part is so fun. Flourishes. So what is a flourish? I don't tend to use these a lot in my fiction, I'll be real honest with you, but you can. So let's say you have a scene break. Okay, you're writing a chapter, it goes from one location to another, and you want to distinguish that on the page. You can use what is known as a scene break. And they can be just a line, they can be a cute little design. They have some options. You can even make one in Canva and upload it to your formatting softwares and use that. I'm going to show you some examples here. I think I have one that's like a spiral. I know that one for sure. You can do like little stars. There's a couple of different things you can do, and I like sometimes using those. I feel like they get used more in nonfiction books, but you definitely can use them in fiction. And the formatting software I use has a couple of different options that you can choose, but again, you can design your own and upload it. You just have to make sure it fits the pixel description. So just make sure that your software will tell you that you're following that when you pop it into Canva. Another thing that you can do with flourishes is at the beginning of the chapter. So you can do things like the stars underneath or a line, or you can, I know some of the softwares have things like little curly cues and little flippy flips, and there are so many things you can do with flourishes at the beginning of your chapter. I also think of flourishes as the way your chapters start. So some chapters start with like, let's say the lazy fox jumped over quick brown fox jumped over the lazy dog, right? So the first word is the. So there's some different things, like they'll do the in all caps. They will do a giant T and then a normal HE. There's different things you can do. I kind of think of those as flourishes. I don't use those in all of my books either. Some of them I think lends itself to that, right? And sometimes I think it's a little overkill. And that mostly is going to show up in your print book. A lot of these are not going to show up in the ebooks. The flourishes, the chapter headings for sure, but sometimes the way the first word shows up, can get overwrited by the ebook, like if the way they set up their fonts and stuff. So a lot of this is mostly print books. The only thing I'm going to say again is a little reminder to keep it subtle. You don't want too many flourishes. You don't want that to be the focus. You want your words, you want your story to be the focus, but it can add a fun element here or there. It can give that tone, it can convey genre, it can enhance the reader's, experience of your book, as long as you don't go too overboard. I think if you're using it on every page, it gets to be a lot. But again, it's one of those places that you get to have fun and show your personality as an author, but also your ability to understand the genre and the reader's experience. And readers are going to come back again and again for something like that. Another thing you want to think about is creating a style sheet. This could literally be a note on an index card that just says what fonts you're using for your paragraphs, what fonts you're using for your headings. If you're doing this yourself in a program like Word, right? If you're doing it in Word and you're going to create from there, you definitely need to keep track of what you're using. If you're doing it in Vellum or there's a couple of other softwares that do a lot of this for you, you may just want to jot down what the style is called and just make sure you have that somewhere, just so that you're consistent. Again, if you find out what that font is and you want to use it in Canva, make sure you write that somewhere. You might want to just jot down like what your flourishes is, what your flourishes are. Make sure you you're going to use a spiral for this part, and you're going to use a swirly swirl for this part. Just make sure you have that down somewhere, so as you're working through the formatting of your book, you keep everything consistent. If all of your headings are, let's say, a heading 2, make sure you know that. And then underneath that, there's a heading 3, right? Make sure you know what the hierarchy is within your book, especially for nonfiction, so that you can keep everything consistent throughout the entire book. The other thing I wanted to talk about really quickly, I just thought of this, is if you are writing a modern day book that has text messaging, there are some different ways you can handle that. I want to talk about that really, really quickly. Most formatting softwares will give you a text option. You can do it via bubbles, like an actual text message. I like to do it as conversation. So I will just put like the quotes, hey, what's up, comma, Sophie texted. I do it that way. I may switch that up for my next book though, because there is a lot of texting and I might want the visual breakup of that on the page. There's a couple of different ways to handle that. So that's another sort of, I kind of consider that a flourish. I don't know if softwares consider that a flourish, but I consider that one of those visual things that you want to think about as you're formatting your books. So just a little side note that I threw in. If you're very confused, I have a freebie that will walk you through all the things you need to think about as you go through the formatting process. So grab that at the link in the description box below. If something has come up that you have a burning question about, please drop that in the comments. I would love to answer it either via the conversation in the comments, or I can make a whole video for you. I make videos every Friday, mostly about the formatting process, but I'm actually going to start also talking about the launching process and the different self-publishing platforms. So hit the subscribe button and meet me here next week. Happy writing.